Superman by James Gunn. It's my favorite superhero movie of the year. Captain America Brave New World wasn't that interesting. I enjoyed Thunderbolts, but it didn't really blow me away. Fantastic Four was kind of predictable and boring, to be honest. So I have to give it to Superman. I had the most fun watching Superman and spent the most time thinking about it afterwards. Superman is the much anticipated first movie in the new DCU. It has the unenviable task of setting up an entire universe from scratch. Yes, technically, Creature Commandos came out first and laid some of the groundwork for the universe, but for all intents and purposes, Superman is the launching pad for everything that follows. It establishes the rules, lays the foundation for metahumans, the Justice Gang, Lex Luthor, how the world views superheroes, and how it reacts to the events of the film. Superman picks up 3 years into Superman's career, and at the very beginning of the film, he's already a known hero in his own right. We don't get a lot of backstory on what he's been up to in those 3 years, but based on how the world already sees him, it's safe to assume he's had several adventures, fought various monsters and villains. James Gunn relays this information in an opening crawl and informs us that metahumans have been on Earth for 3 centuries at this point. It also sets up the movie's conflict, telling us that 3 weeks ago, Superman stopped a military conflict between two countries, Jarhanpur and Boravia, and 3 minutes ago, he lost his first fight to the Hammer of Boravia. So that's the setup. Let's get into what I enjoyed about the movie. First, I really appreciated the bright color palette, which is typical for James Gunn at this point, but stands in contrast to Marvel's drab, muted color grading that makes up so many MCU movies. Metropolis is set mainly during the day, with lots of sunshine and glimmering Art Deco skyscrapers right out of the comics. Superman is often seen as Batman's opposite, embodying light and hope, while Batman is associated with fear and darkness. So Metropolis' sunshine and daytime are the opposite of Gotham, where it's always nighttime and raining. On the topic of setting, all the locations felt very unique and comic book accurate. Just to rattle off a few, the Fortress of Solitude, the Hall of Justice, Luthor Corp, and all these scenes inside the Pocket Universe had their own vibe and feel. The movie moves at a breakneck pace throughout, hardly slowing down except for 2 or 3 scenes featuring Clark and Lois, and for Clark and his parents sharing a tender moment. The interview scene between Clark and Lois was apparently the first thing James Gunn shot for this movie, and I think it works really well, showing us who each character is and their worldview. Clark wants to do good and protect all life because everyone is beautiful and worthy. Lois is a hard-nosed journalist who seeks the truth and questions those in power, even when it's inconvenient or messy. I liked that we skipped the origin story, having seen a more extended version in Man of Steel. I feel like it didn't serve this movie beyond rehashing what most of us already know about Superman. I really liked that the first time I watched this movie, I didn't immediately see where the movie's plot was headed. It surprised me in a few ways. That's always refreshing. One surprise was the plot twist involving the message from Superman's parents, after it was restored by the engineer and released to the world by Lex Luthor. I found all of the secret harem references hilarious as an anime fan. Some people have commented that the movie drops you into the middle of the story rather than starting at the beginning. I don't share this opinion. I feel like it's very on brand for a comic book movie to pick up in the middle of the action, or in medias res, which literally means in the middle of things. Comic books provide some upfront information to get the reader up to speed on the backstory, just like James Gunn did, but from there, they don't hold your hand the entire time, explaining everything and everyone page by page. That's the way to build a world that's lived in and feels full of characters and organizations you want to learn more about. I also loved the sheer number of comic book science fiction ideas and tropes, such as the black hole inside a pocket universe, an anti-proton river, cloning technology, the engineer's nanotech, or an interdimensional rift destroying the city. And all of Mr. Terrific's tech, the T-spheres and the T-craft were great. I really liked the rousing speech Superman gives to Lex about his greatest strength being his humanity at the end of the movie. It sums up Superman's emotional arc throughout the film. But my favorite scene is the quieter one between Clark and Lois around the midpoint. I think the line, "Maybe that's the real punk rock," sold the movie for me, and in classic James Gunn style, I felt the emotional impact from those words. Superman is, or should I say was, not seen as any kind of punk rocker, but somehow this worldview works so well for the movie. Clark also tells Lois he loves her for the first time in this scene, further adding to its emotional weight. I thought James Gunn did a great job casting this film, with a few familiar faces to genre fans, but still Superman, Lois, and several minor characters were relative unknowns to the wider movie-going audiences, and myself. First, David Cornsweet nailed both the Clark Kent role and Superman, which is not easy to do. I completely believed his earnestness and sense of decency, and above all, his humanity, which the movie encapsulates in Superman's arc and his speech at the end. Before Superman, I'd only seen David Cornsweet in Twisters, where he had a small role as the so-called bad guy, which is kind of hilarious in retrospect after seeing him as Superman. In Twisters, he didn't care about the people, and as Superman, that's his primary motivation. I found that parallel ironic. But I came away from this movie a David Cornsweet fan and look forward to him returning as Superman. Lois Lane, played by Rachel Brosnahan, who I wasn't really familiar with, did a fantastic job of showing her with agency and a force to be reckoned with in her own right. The movie gives her plenty to do without it feeling like a tacked on piece of the story. She, along with Mr. Terrific, ends up rescuing Superman from Lex's prison, and it's believable that she would go to those lengths to save Clark. Lex Luthor, played by Nicholas Hoult, is a driving force of the plot, just like most superhero stories are driven primarily by the villain's actions and the hero's reactions. His plans involve a military conflict between the fictional countries of Jar-Hanpor and Baravia, but this only serves as a pretext to get the United States government to allow him to capture and kill Superman. Nicholas Hoult delivers a powerful and at times dark performance, killing innocent people and willing to sacrifice entire cities to achieve his goals. Driven by jealousy of Superman and his ability to capture the world's attention, he lacks any redeeming qualities beyond his super intellect and considerable resources. I was already a fan of Nicholas Hoult, but this role seemed very well suited to him, and I couldn't imagine someone else playing this version of Lex. I was so happy to see Nathan Fillion finally get the chance to play Green Lantern after years of being fan cast and him voicing him in the DC animated movies. I thought his cocky Guy Gardner worked great. Eddie Gathegi played the scene-stealing Mr. Terrific, who had the most significant role in the Justice Gang, helping rescue Superman and stop the dimensional rift from destroying Metropolis. His fight scene on the beach against the Luthor Corps soldiers was a definite highlight of the film. I also liked his deadpan jokes and his dry sense of humor. Isabella Merced didn't have as much to do as Hawkgirl as the other members of the Justice Gang, but I'm a huge fan of Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, the animated shows, so I'd like to see more of her, as the character has a lot of potential. There's not much to dwell on in terms of things I didn't like about the movie, as I really enjoyed it overall. But if I had to nitpick a few things, one would be that the military conflict between Baravia and Jar-Hanpor felt a little weak in terms of what we actually saw on screen. I get it wasn't the primary focus of the movie, but rather a subplot. However, Superman stops the first invasion attempt 3 weeks before the movie begins, so we don't get to see that. At the end of the movie, the Justice Gang stops a second invasion attempt, mainly using Green Lantern's powers and Metamorphose abilities. I thought it was all wrapped up just a little too quickly, and I would have liked to have seen more. Second, I didn't care for Ma and Pa Kent, strangely enough. Their country bumpkin dialogue felt out of place. And maybe that was the point, to show the difference between Smallville, Kansas, and Metropolis. I'm not sure why it bothered me so much, and maybe that's just me. But it was off-putting, and I felt it was just a bit too exaggerated for my taste. Next, it's not really a dislike, but Hawkgirl murdering a world leader seemed like a strange choice and also out of place in this movie, where all life is considered precious and beautiful and Superman won't let a squirrel get smushed. It does show us the difference between Superman and Hawkgirl and how evil and beyond redemption Gurkos was. I just thought it was a bit jarring, especially with the sudden smash cut right when he hit the ground. I am curious to see where this leads, since James Gunn has promised it will be addressed and carry ramifications moving forward. Lastly, I wasn't a big fan of the Ultraman reveal just being a mindless Superman clone. I get why James Gunn needed someone powerful enough to defeat Superman multiple times and serve as Lex's avatar and his mouthpiece, but he's literally being controlled by Lex down to every single fight move. We're not even sure if he can speak on his own without Lex giving him the script. I think it would be interesting to explore if he ever returns from the Pocket Universe, having survived the black hole and come back as Bizarro or something similar. I'm giving Superman 4 out of 5 stars. Overall, an entertaining and enjoyable movie from start to finish. Lots of heart and emotion went into the making and the story. The sheer volume of social media buzz and reactions to the movie speak for itself. It was the most financially successful comic book movie of 2025, if box office numbers matter to you. They don't really matter to me. The goodwill and positive reactions to the movie count for way more. I personally saw tons of memes and articles praising the direction and calling Mr. Terrific and Crypto fan favorites and scene stealers. I think it's an excellent start for the new DCU, and next year we're going to get Supergirl. But personally, I can't wait for The Man of Tomorrow, which is already scheduled for July 2027. That's my review of Superman. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video.